Well, hey buddy,
Hey man.
it's good to see you. Thanks for coming to do this. I've been excited to share this conversation. It's a conversation that, or a few conversations that you and I have had as it relates to developing this piece that we ended up collaborating on and putting out into the world. But um, I kind of want to take us back to. I don't even know the timeline, but I know it was a few years ago when you and I were on a phone call, and then you ended up, coming out and doing a little work at our place at Onsite, and I believe we were sharing a meal on maybe the last day of your experience, and we were just talking about the importance of transformation and what it looks like for us as human beings to kind of just reclaim and reconnect to the parts of ourselves that can get just disintegrated and that we can abandon along the way. Almost every human being I know does it at some point, but a lot of us don't take the opportunity to take focused time and say, all right, what parts of my narrative historically just don't belong anymore, and what parts do I need to kind of get in sync in order to live into the best version of who I know I can be. And we were talking about transformation and reconnection, and then talked about kind of our model of how we like to guide people there and how it's very action and experiential oriented. And I remember saying that it's really an artistic expression of humanity and the human spirit. And then your eyes lit up, and of course I was already a fan of what you do. We've known each other for years, back when you were just doing music, and then I became such a fan of your art. But in that conversation, your eyes lit up and said, "Speaking of artistic expression, can I show you something?" And I was like, "Yeah." And so you walked me down to the cabin that you had been staying in, and invited me in, and the walls were just filled. You'd made yourself a literal art studio.
I was supposed to be journaling,
Yeah.
but vandalizing your cabin with my paintings.
I'd never seen that. I walked in and I was like, I was in like an art studio, and it felt like your story was just all over the wall and your expression. And so tell me about that experience.
Yeah, well, just being there, away from the distractions, away from the cell phones, when you're really going inward in that time on the exercises and talking a lot, and it's an experience that for me creativity blossomed. Like every time I went back to my room, instead of turning on the TV or checking my phone, I just would start creating. And I think that experience was such a good facilitator for that creativity, and really discovering how to put what and I know this sounds really generic, but I really felt it for the first time, of pure expression of things that I was feeling inside, transferring from my fingertips to the paint, to the paper, and then the lines that creates tells the story. Putting each painting up on the wall then tells its own story, which I guess is reflective of my story. But it's kind of a way of journaling, and writing for me is just, I've done it in hotel rooms when I've been touring or traveling. I've just sat and painted and put them all up on the wall and see, what is it that I'm feeling? what is this telling me? That was the amazing discovery I found with art, through art. I think it's a gift to humanity for people that feel that call to express through song or music or writing, painting. And but my experience there, dovetailing with my creative instinct, just really caught fire after having some breakthrough moments in the programs. It's a very visceral experience. A lot of head knowledge became galvanized into my character and into my person. I think that's been the way that you show up to Onsite. I showed up to Onsite, and I was just, how did I get here? And I mean the great here. How did I arrive to this point where along the way, little moments of peeling myself off and abandoning that and showing up empty but ready to be filled,
I love the way I like the word galvanized. I haven't thought about it quite like that, but I like the way that you talked about, how often in life do a lot of us feel empty. Like there are parts of ourselves in our stories that we're just all human. Nobody escapes adversity. We all experience a significant amount of stress, and that impacts us, our nervous systems, our minds, our brains, our spirits. And I don't think there's anybody in the world that cannot relate to like, oh man, I feel exhausted or tired at some point in our stories. But rarely do we take time to say, I want to show up empty because I'm ready to be filled up.
Well, it's the willingness, right? I can't reconcile any other reason we're here on Earth. I mean, there has to be growth. There has to, but before that happens, there has to be willingness to grow, right? And before willingness, there has to be an awareness of like, oh man, okay, this isn't the best version of myself. And I know that's an overly used phrase, but what an opportunity that we've had and that you're giving people that are willing, that are aware, that are willing, and then that's when it becomes traction,
Yeah, I like that. And I'll tell you what was interesting about our moment there, and it happens a lot. People come to a place like Onsite to receive hopefully to receive something that they feel the team I'm lucky to get to work with can give. And then what they don't recognize is that usually when they come, we end up receiving as a team as much as anything we've given, because everybody I think brings their unique gifts and energy to a space like that and make it better. And you did that not just for Onsite, but you did it for me in that moment. I don't know if I've shared this part with you, but we know experientially, which is, art is one of those elements that fall underneath an experiential umbrella, which is a modality and a methodology that we use to support people in the change process. And we use a lot of art and music and drama and role play in our process. So I can tell you, scientifically the benefits, what it does. I can also tell you from experiencing it interpersonally and then also witnessing it with a lot of people that it's profound. I can watch people come into those settings, and usually you take a room like at Onsite and we create 16 by 16 spaces with 12 feet of cedar just left wide open so that you can draw and do parts of your story and then put it along the wall and create it, because we know that when we say something to someone, it activates just a third of our brain, but when we see it, it activates 2/3. When we make it kinesthetic and put it into action, it activates all of it. And so why wouldn't we want to engage all parts of somebody's story in order to help them heal? And I've seen that, and I think I had it here. I think I was like, okay, I understand that this works. I'm glad we get to continue to do it. But I'd never seen anybody take it and go do it in their own expression. And what I saw from there is I thought, so many of the tools we introduce at Onsite feel like they're for Onsite, and then they never live on beyond that.
Yeah.
But you showed me that you took that into this space, and then you actually gifted me that art. I don't know if you remember that, but I've got it framed. I need to show it to you. And I was so proud to get those particular pieces, because something unlocked for me that day from when I saw, oh, here's what we do therapeutically. You turned it into action and said, no, here's what I do interpersonally for myself, and something I'll continue to do. And you're an accomplished artist. And so that's not a jump for you to go create amazing art. But for me, I'm not. But I walked away from that feeling like, there's an artist that lives in every single one of us.
100%.
And I get to go put my creativity into action, and it doesn't have to stop, in my case, in a personal growth process.
Yeah. Well, the barometer should be not am I a good artist that's going to be selling in galleries in New York and Europe, but it's like, am I being authentic in this moment of creating what's inside of me? Like that to me is the most compelling form of human interaction, is sharing something so real and authentic, and it has a vibration to it, and when it's true and sincere. And so I think that is a graceful way of excavating pain and yourself and soul, is putting it on paper and being willing, again, to not judge it. Like that's what I found through this journey of painting is like I did it because it felt good. And I wanted to look at these things when I was done with them. I didn't necessarily want to share it with people. That was my wife who taught me into commoditizing it and selling it, which it's done well, and I'm thankful for that. But I have to keep that space sacred because if I'm doing it right, I'm having a suspension of time and thought, and it's just pure feeling and emoting and glossed over eyes, and I kind of don't really know what I'm doing until I snap out of it and I look at what I'm done, and that's when it's right. That's when it's, and that's, everyone has that capacity. I truly believe that, and it might show up in a different form, but again, that's the reward, is having a moment, be it brief, of pure authenticity and honesty that hopefully then spreads out through life, everyday life. You know, I really think that authentic interaction with humans is the most beautiful thing. That's also one of the most forgotten things. You know, how easy it is to disconnect through whatever cordial social norms and small talk and this and that. But man, it's like, what an opportunity we have every day to have that moment of suspension of ego and judgment and overthinking, and the voices in our head silenced by just pure, it's like surfing the beautiful emerald wave. It's, you know, if you think too much, you're gonna get tumbled over and buried, you know. It's just, but if you're in a balanced state, you know, it's a beautiful ride.
Even talking about this now after the fact, it's reminding me of the origins, which I love tracking stuff back to the origin story of why we create and why we wanted to put something out in the world like what we did with this piece, which I would say this piece in a sense was more artistic versus like, let's make a brand video for Onsite. It was like, no, let's make a PSA for humanity. And let's not try to sell them something. Let's try to share our experience, our strength, and our hope in hopes that it might inspire other people to pursue their own version of feeling connected to who they are, their own version, their own artistic expression. And that may not be at Onsite, and that's okay with us. We just want to inspire the world. And a lot of that started from that day when I saw your work in your room, because, you know, there's an old comedian guy named George Carlin that used to say, words are the way we hide. And I really believe that. And a lot of people after an Onsite experience, particularly if it's a friend that's coming through, then we'll connect on the back end and they'll unpack, say, here's what I did, and you know, hope, and it was a really great experience, and here's what it did for me. And they'll tell me the whole story. You didn't do that. I mean, you walked me in and you were like, and I literally was just walking around looking at this, and you used very little words, but I felt like I got to see and experience your transformation. And another important thing happened that day was you said, hey, you know what? Because I was really moved by that. I don't know if you remember, but I was like, this is unbelievable to see what you did from our experience and then transformed it into your own, and now you're sharing it with me. And in a way, you came here to be transformed by us, and I'm feeling transformed by you. And I thought, man, can't we do more of that in the world? Because ultimately, I love what we get to do at Onsite, and I think there'll always be a need for it. We'll keep doing it, but I'd love to work ourselves out of a job one day, so that the stuff we get to experience there, when the walls are down and people get to be all of a human, all of it, you know, that we could start experiencing that in our living rooms and in our boardrooms and as parents, and just have real authentic conversation. And then that leads us all the way up to me making a phone call to you and introducing the idea that you know, our creative team is so talented. They're just great storytellers, and we've never had the luxury of having people help us tell the story of Onsite. We've just counted on the people who've experienced to go talk about it, which has been great. But now we've got this amazing team of creatives, and they're passionate about helping us tell our story. And they said we need to create something visual for people to be able. And so we start brainstorming about that. And it took me all the way back to me having a transformational experience by seeing your art, and thought, man, if I think visually about what our process looks and feels like, it really feels a lot like somebody creating art and the evolution of it and then revealing it. And so I called you and I thought, this is a crazy idea, and he's probably gonna either laugh or say I don't have time for this. But we had the best conversation. And you immediately went back to your own story. And you said, this takes me right back to remembering my experience of how I showed up, what I went through, how I transformed, and I'd love to be a part of it.
Yeah, well, and I felt even more strongly about that a few years after my time there, because it wasn't a spiritual high, a mountaintop high. I don't trust those, and it's been more of an integration into my life and a higher base point of my existence, I think. And so again, what would it look like to guide people on a journey to express themselves through a medium of paint or writing or some kind of creative workshop that I think would tap into that childlike mentality, where you're not worried about the results, you're not worried about what people think of it, you just want to have a whimsical time and create, which is something that y'all really emphasized at the beginning, was visualizing yourself as a child. And it was one of the first times I knew how or attempted to give myself grace, from whatever self-sabotage and self-hatred that I carried with me for years. We don't have to get into that, but I think it was just some misguided religious upbringing, in the South. Yeah. But it's like, so here I am, and I see myself as a child, and I'm like, oh man, I do love that kid, man. Like, what happened? It's okay, like that was the great starting point for my time at Onsite. And again, if I'm creating right, if I'm writing music or playing or painting, if I'm doing it right, I'm doing it as a child, up here.
What was it about seeing, take us to that moment, because I think a lot of people don't necessarily get that experience to envision and or interact with themselves at a younger age. What was it like for you when you...
Oh man. Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is, I got emotional when I saw myself, because I was almost seeing it from my future self. It's like, you want to protect him from all the hurt that he was about to go through. But again, that's why we're here. And I don't regret anything, any trauma or setbacks or things that felt unfair along the way, because that's a part of the bricks that built my foundation, So, but that was powerful. It's a powerful exercise if you can really let yourself go there,
Yeah, for me, thanks for sharing that. And for me, I had done some of that work where I got to be reacquainted with a younger part of myself and wanted to just nurture, foster, and like you said, protect. And then I had kids of my own. And that's when it really got emotional for me, because suddenly I did my best to connect with a younger part of myself, but I really connected and nurtured to my kiddos. And I could be more empathetic, more graceful, more unconditional, more protective, and more loving of them than it was for me to be with me at a younger age. But when I had them and I started recognizing, how could I treat you like I treat my own kid? And why don't I? Then it really started to drop in.
Yeah.
And I've just noticed that my empathy for years towards others has been pretty good. It's, it's why I do what I do in a way. Just feel empathetic towards the human experience. But I've always struggled with being empathetic towards myself. And it was that kind of work that you're experiencing, or that you talked about, was when I felt like the bridge was complete. And I wanted to treat me the way I would want to treat my own son.
And there was a time when I would hear somebody explain this like you're doing now, and I would, in the back of my head, go, no, I don't deserve to treat myself good. I'm supposed to suffer. I'm supposed to be, I'm not worthy of any success. I'm not worthy of any happiness. that wasn't my family upbringing. It's just somewhere along the way, I had some twisted philosophy and theology or whatever that as a young person really prevented me in my growth to be empathetic. Like I was not empathetic for a long time. And I just figured, well, this is who I am. This is the way I'm going to be. You know, take it or leave it. But there was no dimension. There was no depth to life with that. And it's so counterintuitive in a way, because the world teaches you to conquer, to win, to be the best. And man, I have found there's so much more strength in letting go and trusting in the buoyancy of truth to always rise and you know, take us on these journeys that we can't navigate and like control, where there's both going all the time.
So when you initially, you know, taking us all the way back to when you showed me the art that you had done while you were at Onsite, and you said, hey, I'm in a space where I'd like to be a part of something like this for other people. And then I put that call in not too long ago and said, what do you think about overlaying that experience that we had back then and seeing if we could somehow share it with other people in a way to tell our story? And you had a lot of excitement about it and said, I'd like to do that. Tell me why. What about you would want to share? Because I know it's a personal process, like you talked about earlier, your art, but why now is it important for you to kind of share it with others?
Well, I mean, it's what I want to propagate, because I've seen the fruits of it in my own life and the lives of others around me. So it's a noble venture. It's a noble focus and desire, you know, like it's not something that I can analyze my motives and thoughts behind it, and I don't find any reason to do it for gain or anything other than, man, I know what has been a catalyst for me in my healing through this vehicle of art and creativity in that atmosphere of Onsite. You're already, when you go to Onsite, you're already in this environment of people on all kinds of levels of their journey, but it's palpable. And I just think it could really jumpstart people's journey inward to the outward and reconnecting their world and the world around them, like what you've been saying. Like, it's a connectivity. It's an exercise in connectivity. You know, I think we're all connected whether we like it or not, but those lines in between us that bring us together, I think, can be revealed when your eyes are open, and sometimes your eyes are opened when you're in the middle of a wonderful creative process. And maybe there's anger behind it and purging. Maybe there's curiosity, maybe there's sadness, maybe there's joy. I don't know, but whatever it is, the vehicle is always there. With music, you can play a sad song. You can emote sadness with a minor key. You can have bold, strong lines with sadness or anger with art, or, you know, whimsical, wispy, whatever. It's the vehicle, and you can have the choice of expressing it. And there's something about seeing it, you know, instead of talking about it and thinking about it.
Yeah, I appreciate the way you framed that up, and I think, you know, we have a much more likelihood of keeping something, particularly something sacred, when we hold it loosely and are able to give it away and share it. And I think that's what this whole piece was about. If you you know, when we talk about in the video how maybe we feel, we say we have the world at our fingertips, but yet we ask the question, is this all there really is? And you and I both have a lot of creative friends that have had a lot of success, and I know, I'm sure you can relate to people having achieved the height of what they dreamed of since they were a little girl or boy, professionally or creatively, and then the next day felt down and depressed, and it's like, well, now what? this wasn't what I always thought it was going to be. I thought it would fulfill me.
I know.
And
So true.
we've had those conversations, and we say, is there more? And then in this, the narrative that we put in this video, we say maybe we feel disconnected from the world because we're disconnected from the world inside ourselves. And then we move it all the way along to where we end by saying when we reconnect to ourselves, we actually reconnect the world. And that's what this is all about at the end of the day. And I love that our processes seem to mirror each other so well, that you say, this is not about me. It's not necessarily about my art. And I would say, this is not about Onsite. We just happened to come together because we connected on a message that we wanted to share with people. You know, one last piece I would be curious about was when you immediately went into the studio and sent me a picture or two of like some art pieces that would be kind of custom for this experience, for what we were talking about doing. And then the team went down to your studio and spent a day with you, and you came up with something totally different. And talk about how the evolution of the pieces that we're going to get to share with you, that they're seeing in this video, but you're going to get to see them, those of you that get to come to Onsite, and then we'll try to make them available. But how did that manifest?
Well, it's interesting because I felt myself going back into the self-doubt mode when I was honored to get this opportunity and to be asked by you guys to do this, team up and work on this art piece. But again, I start thinking too far down the road, like, who all's gonna see this? Is it gonna be right? Is it gonna be believable? And, you know, all of that feedback loop that it's not ideal to have as an artist or a human for that. And so I was a little worried throughout my first few drafts of what we were doing and looking for. But again, hands off the wheel, the team shows up to my studio in Florida. I have no idea what we're gonna do. I have no idea. They're setting up cameras and lights. I'm like looking at that blank canvas, like, I have no idea what's about to happen. I mean, because if you don't get it, it's not like you just reschedule and come back next week. You know, I mean, you got schedules to keep. And so, hands off the wheel, start getting ideas flown around the room. There's a good creative energy bubbling. There's no egos clashing. It's just, what's gonna facilitate, what's gonna be bigger than us and our ideas. And it was a joint effort, and just by literally swirling my hand around, maybe messing up at something, and Candy's like, ooh, what's that? I like that, keep going. And then it just evolves, and oh, this could be the story. The blue in the middle of it starts growing. That's the life, that's the growth, that's the healing, that's the connectivity to the world. You know, where the first painting's kind of dark and chaotic and confusion, and then the pieces slowly evolve into the growth, and it becomes easier to look at, and more green and blue and prettier colors. I mean, it's still, but at the same time, it's not a Picasso masterpiece. It's literally swirling paint around. But I think the story behind it, of the team and my doubts and fears, and then it all working out, it's the hands off. And the white knuckling is just, it's a killer of creativity and a killer of growth. And so I'm just so thrilled that came out the way that it did, with everyone involved. And you know, it's not like I had them come into my studio and this is the way it is, here it is, you know, take it or leave it. I feel like it was almost like being at Onsite, you know. But that's the natural propagation from those of us that have been in that world and have healed. It's like you kind of want to live it, you know.
And that's exactly why we wanted to do this. What you just explained is, I felt like you were explaining a process that's important to you. And you did parallel it to growth. You said white knuckling and it's a killer of creativity and growth. I was like, come on, there's a quote. But that's the process of people coming and doing a deep dive on their story at Onsite. They're so parallel, and which is why I think they merged so beautifully. So if there was something you'd want to share with you know, people that are going to see this piece and that may be encouraged by it, or it may provoke some discomfort as they think about where they are in their journey, and they may be curious about pursuing their own version of personal growth. Like I said, it doesn't have to be at Onsite, just in general, just starting to ask deeper questions and understanding that I may deserve some healing opportunities. What would you want to share with them?
Well, I mean, what I expected to get out of life and what I got out of life is the reason why I went to Onsite, because I went to the top of my mountain. I got everything I want. I had gotten to the point I've wanted to get in life, achieved everything I wanted to achieve. And again, it's like, why am I miserable? Why am I so much more empty? And I mean, look, there's not one program and not one book that's going to be the silver bullet to healing. It's been a process. But again, my time at Onsite made it more of a visceral experience that I could hold and turn this knowledge up here into my being and the way I'm operating and the base point of my operation of my life. And man, one of the trappings that prevented me from that was taking myself seriously. You know, I mean, there's so much freedom and liberation when you're just like, man, okay, I'm a mess. All right, it's okay. But I don't hate myself for it anymore. You know, golly, how do you grow when you can't stand yourself? And so, I mean, yeah, it's scary. But if you're expecting something out of life, and I just believe it's the universal law. There was a time when I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I'd be happy if I had that. I don't know, you know. But
I know that one.
you know, when somebody's like, you know, money doesn't buy you happiness, I'm like, well, good, a little bit. As fleeting as it was. But yeah, so now there's just a million things around me right now in this moment that I'm thankful for, that give me so much joy than anything I've accomplished or what I'm going to accomplish. And so anything that comes after that, success or failure, it's just a part of the journey. It's a part of the story. It's not the trajectory of your life forever. It's just, there's cycles, there's seasons. You know, nothing stays the same forever. The great pendulum swings here and there and back and forth. So there's just so much to be thankful for in this room right here. You know, and that's the only place I'm at right now. And it took quite a bit of effort and years and practice to just have that basic awareness, right? And it's what we all start with, but somewhere along the way we get live in the past, anger, regret, resentment, live in the future, anxiety, what ifs. But it's like, none of that is right here in this chair because it's not there, you know? And so, yeah, I mean, selfishly, I want people to have that untethered lightness. Life is hard. Life can be dark. But you don't have to wear it like a wardrobe. You know, I just want people to be liberated from that thing that most of us create ourselves. You know, it's not that complicated. We complicate it infinitely. You know, so it's laughable for me on my journey. It's like, golly, why did I? It's okay though, you know. But places like Onsite, there's only one place like it, and all I can say is that's where I started really getting the traction instead of treading the water.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I was thinking I might have something insightful or inspiring to say myself to follow what I had invited you to share for people that were watching this, but I honestly don't think I could follow that or say it any better. I'm serious. Some of what you said, I was over here just thinking, okay, all right, I need more of that. So, well said. Thank you for sharing your artistic gift, but just more importantly, thanks for sharing your heart with us. So I would just say to you, if you are watching this and curious at all about your own story, or maybe you feel activated or overwhelmed a little bit by hearing about what it's like for two guys to experience treading water and then trying to grab some traction. I want you to hear this is an incredibly human process. And we're not two experts here trying to talk to you and tell you what you need to do. Your journey is your journey. It may never involve Chris's work or Onsite's work. We're just here to inspire that we feel like we live in a world that feels a little untethered, a little disconnected, like that original painting, feels a little dark and confusing and chaotic. And we fully believe that you can pursue the transformation to have more light and color in your life. And that's not something any of you need, but I really believe it's something every single one of you deserve. And so thanks for following along, watching this piece. I hope you value it, and I hope you'll share it. And also thank you for hearing about how it kind of came to be, how this was inspired. I've been so inspired and have grown a lot through the evolution of this process. And so we wanted to just bring you all along for the journey. And at the end of the day, hey, we're just two guys that are trying to turn our mess into a message, and we hope you'll do the same.